Okay, well, we're live. Here we are.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole.
Should we should we wait a couple minutes for people to hop on, or should we just dive in? Sorry.
Yeah, this is Amanda. We're obviously very well prepared for this. Yeah, we can just chat for a couple minutes and see if anyone hops on, but I know people will just kind of
Come as
hop
they go.
on as they see it.
Yeah.
Um, so I am in Maui right now, which is not where I usually live, but there's a beautiful painting behind me. And while I'm waiting to see if anyone hops on, this is like an original painting that my friend who I'm staying with, her friend painted. And she said that he can just like blast them out like it's nothing. So
It's beautiful.
it's really beautiful. This whole entire island is a work of art, just like that. Yesterday, we watched a sunset at Black Rock. If anyone is familiar with the island, it's actually in Lahaina. Did I get that right? I did. Which is like a pretty touristy spot, and so it's really interesting to kind of walk through that like touristy area after having done more kind of like backwoods local-y stuff for a couple days and see like the two of them side by side. And we climbed up on the rocks so we could look west, and the sun was setting with like the waves crashing in these rocks, and the two islands that are off the coast of Maui were like in this haze of like the horizon sunset. It was perfect.
Mm.
So it looked kind of like that.
Ah, I want to go to
Yeah.
Hawaii someday.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, so a lot of times when Amanda and I talk, we will start with a little bit of a meditation. And so we're just going to kind of invite anyone who's watching or who watches this later, if you'd like to get present. That's what we're going to do. So I'll just invite Amanda and I are going to close our eyes. Anyone else watching is welcome to as well. And just noticing your breath and letting it be just how it is right now. Noticing your feet on the floor. Noticing your butt in the chair, your back against the chair. And feeling supported. Letting your breath pick you up from that support that's below. Your breath lifts you up. And then just noticing the senses, what you hear around you. What you see, even with your eyes closed. And what you smell. And what you might be tasting. And then what you feel, like the air against your skin, your clothes against your skin, the bottom of your feet on the floor. And then just bringing Amanda and I present to our sense of inspiration, why we're here, inspiration about our connection, that we got to meet each other and that we're doing this together. And then for anyone else who's watching, if there's some little light of inspiration inside of you, I'm just noticing that. And something that you're excited about. Something you want to try. Someone who inspires you, maybe. And just expanding that feeling. And just inviting everyone, Amanda and I, to come back into the room as we're ready. Open our eyes when we're ready.
Thank
How are
you.
you feeling, Amanda? Do you feel more present now?
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
not as swirly.
And we have, well, 4 people. We had 6 a second ago.
Mm.
So, Amanda, would you like to uh, share like a little bit about yourself when you're ready? Oh, okay. I lost Amanda for a second. She'll be back. Um, while I'm waiting for her, I guess I'll talk a little bit more about this time I'm having in Maui. Uh, I feel so lucky that I'm staying with a friend here who knows a lot of local people and is involved in the community, because I'm just getting this totally different experience than I think I would have if I came here, like by myself, or more as a, I guess more as a tourist. And the culture is just so beautiful, and I can't do it justice yet. I'm still a student. I'm here just kind of absorbing and learning, but it's really inspiring. Uh, what's really inspiring about it is their connection to the land. Oh, there's Amanda. She's back. Hey, Amanda.
Hey,
Well,
technology.
I just started talking about Maui again.
Oh, good.
There's I'll finish with what I was saying. This is one of the things that inspired me the most. And so we did this Road to Hana Drive the other day, which is like this crazy looping road around a very like rugged part of the island with a lot of waterfalls and ocean views. And I was taking some videos of while we were driving just to kind of get the feel for this crazy road. And one of the videos I took, the guys were explaining this concept that I don't remember the like Hawaiian word for it, but this concept that people used to sort of, I guess, own or manage or be gifted land in these pie shapes. So it was kind of like a point in the middle up at the top of the mountain that like extended down to the ocean. And
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like followed like the water cycles, like where the water like landed and drained down the whole land and came to the ocean, and everyone kind of had a piece of every microclimate, with all the different diversity of like foods and medicines. And uh, so I just thought it was so beautiful. Um, so there's a little piece of something that's been inspiring me. I might have to post that video sometime because it was a really
Yeah.
just beautiful taste of the culture and the way that they honor the land here. So Amanda, right before you cut out, I was gonna just see if you wanted to tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Amanda Lucia. I am an artist, a creative, and nature lover. And Right now, my biggest inspiration is connecting with people and connecting with other creatives and just inviting people into being supported and knowing like how good it feels to be supported. As a creative, it can be really, really challenging to exist in a world that's so fast paced. And so, if anything, I hope this conversation kind of inspires people to slow down a little bit and be present and just like welcome the inspiration that can come from just being present.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you. That really like that hit me just like as a creative person, the world does seem really fast sometimes. Like I remember being a kid and just I could just go outside and I feel like I don't know, be in like a fantasy world just exploring nature for like hours and hours and it felt so timeless. And in the last couple of years I noticed like I kind of had to get in touch again with that way of existing.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super important to like connect with that inner child part of us and be out in nature and just get your hands dirty and hop on
Yes.
rocks and just
Yeah.
let yourself play.
Do you like climbing rocks better or trees better?
Probably rocks. Trees, yeah, I don't trust brain. That's so funny. I'm like, I don't trust branches.
Do you want to explain why that's funny?
So, we've been talking a lot about like growth edges, and there's kind of this metaphor for kind of dancing with your growth edge, and it's this image of a person on a very, very tiny, skinny branch. And I think part of growth is kind of taking those steps and trusting that like the branch is going to support you, even though it may look so flimsy and like so not trusting. And so one of the themes has been like, we're like dancing on skinny branches by doing this project together and showing up as our authentic selves. It's like, it can be really scary to just like put yourself out there. But some of the people who inspire me the most are those that are showing up in their mess and showing up without all the answers and doing it anyways. And so I just thought that was funny because I was like,
Oh, that
I
was
don't
perfect.
trust that branch. Yet here we are, trusting that the world is supporting us.
And Amanda has the most beautiful mess. Her messiness is the most beautiful messiness I've ever seen. My messiness feels a lot more awkward to me, at
No,
least.
but I love your awkwardness, and like our awkwardness together is like very endearing. Like I just love it so much.
Yeah, it's one of the parts of myself I've been coming to learn how to love more.
Mm,
Uh, I think though that when we are let ourselves be messy and awkward, that we let other people do it too,
yeah, it's like
and we all kind of
giving them
get to
permission.
settle into some realness.
Yeah, yeah, and like as a recovering perfectionist, I'm like, ugh, like something that perfect just sounds boring. Like I don't want a perfect life, you know. It just sounds boring, and there's no depth to perfect because it's already perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, perfectionism has been one of my big challenges as well, or adventures.
Yeah. That like leads into one of the questions I was going to ask you of like,
Yeah.
what are the challenges that come up with your creative
Yeah.
pursuits?
Yeah. Well, I guess first I'll just introduce myself a little bit because I don't think I really did that yet, and then I'll answer that question. My name's Nicole Robinson. Normally, I live in Maryland, and I have been on a pretty wild healing journey for the last 4.5 years or so, and it's led me to really wanting to help other people heal And so now I work as a mind-body practitioner, and I work with people one-on-one, and I work with people in groups. And a big project I've been doing recently is group cannabis sessions, exploring cannabis as a medicine and as a tool for helping us tap into our awareness of ourselves and for our healing and growth. And, like, actually, Amanda and I have lots of things in common. I also am an artist and a super nature lover, and I also am a musician. And that actually kind of brings me to the answer to your question, which is, what are the biggest challenges in my creative pursuits? I feel like my biggest challenge is that I have too many of them. And I actually think that I come across other people with that all the time. Uh, one of my biggest struggles that it kind of still continues on to this day, although I almost have just accepted it as just kind of part of who I am. Maybe not as much of a struggle, but just that, like, I'm an explorer. Like, I'm not a person who just does one thing. And if I try to make myself only do one thing, it kind of suffocates me. And part of my healing over the last few years has really been, a big part of that has been tapping into creative expression, like, just huge part of it. And I learned how to start letting it flow, and let what wants to come out when it's ready, and not try to force my creativity. And yeah, I think that it's still an ongoing dance for me, because sometimes I want to bring something a little bit more fully into life, and so I might not be in 100% flow all the time if I'm creating something, but it's much easier. It's much easier if I am.
Mm-hmm. And it's also challenging to choose what to follow, and like knowing where is your heart really being pulled towards, and it's like sometimes as a creative it is totally overwhelming because you have like 1,000 ideas, and it's hard to pick one to really like manifest and make into like an actual like artifact like in front of you. Yeah.
I was muted for a second because there's
Okay.
a little bit loud here, but that there's something there, with just having a lot of ideas and like knowing which idea to go for. Here's I'll tell a little story about this. It's kind of funny. Several weeks ago, I've been as I've been doing this work with cannabis, I like to create my own experiences with it that are very intentional, where I'll like partake and then I'll meditate, or just to kind of explore my experience more. And I've been curious about the overlap between cannabis and creativity. So I had this thing in mind, like I wanted to create this animation, and had it all worked out. It's going to be really beautiful. Now, maybe this is my chance to create that, because I never got to, right? It's like this idea of like a person, and they're just like pulling off their layers, and it's like, sadness, pulling it off. And what's underneath that? Oh, it's like fear. Okay, like pulling that down. All right, what's underneath that? It's loneliness, or what's underneath that? It's anger. What's underneath that maybe is gratitude. It can sometimes, I feel like you start pulling layers back when you're working with some kind of situation or circumstance you're in. Eventually, I found the last layer you always get to is love. And I wanted to make an animation of that. And I had this song in mind. It was like I had the whole thing. And I had some cannabis. I had set an intention to create this thing. And then I was like way too high to use this software program. And so I tried to make it happen. I like spent like 15 minutes being like, okay, just breathe for a little bit. All right, now can you figure it out? No, my brain not going to be able to figure that out. I had only used it like one time before, like a year ago. So instead, I cooked a nice meal and stuff. But what ended up happening was I got my guitar out and I ended up playing guitar, and I recorded like a beautiful, like original song and posted it online, and like a ton of people like loved it. And it was just a beautiful song where like the birds were in the song and like the police siren was at the perfect timing with the ending of the song. And it was just like meant to be. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I set an intention to create, and what I wanted to create originally like did not work at all, but like I just kind of went with the flow and listened to my body, and I ended up creating what was meant to be created that night.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the creative process, is just like willingness and trust to follow, because it led you to something like great. Greater than, I think, greater than
Yeah.
the original idea. And I think that you can still do that. You can still go back to that like animation and create it. But yeah, it's so interesting, like what happens when we kind of surrender.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I want to explore more with people, and other creatives, of like, what have been your moments of surrender, and how do you just kind of allow and trust the process? Because I used to kind of create and just have more of an idea of like what I wanted the painting to look like, instead of just allowing the painting to kind of form, and just kind of dancing with the layers and getting whatever wisdom I need to from it. Yeah, it's a lot of trusting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trusting.
I know, like you mentioned that just your creative process has brought about a lot of self-discovery.
Yeah.
Did you speak to that a little bit? It kind of feels like an appropriate time.
Yeah. It's interesting because like right now I'm kind of in this exploratory phase of my creativity, and I'm kind of like you, where I don't just want to pick one. Like I don't want to just do watercolor. I want to do block printing and stenciling and alcohol inks, and kind of letting myself explore has been permission to like let myself explore parts of myself. And I can sometimes like just find so much meaning in the process of like, okay, I'm doing this lino cut and I'm cutting these big chunks of rubber out, and it's like, oh, I can totally like carve things out of myself that don't belong. It's like this, it's almost like this mirror sometimes of like, oh yeah, like I can do that with myself. And there's certain layers that we kind of pack on, just from other people, and art has really allowed me to kind of like strip those layers. And it's almost been like an unbecoming process for me, of like unbecoming the patterns and the conditioning and the things that aren't actually like me, and like what my soul is really about.
Yeah.
um
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
I've noticed something very similar with myself too, just in art, but also in nature too. It's like the metaphors come through that are like more powerful than anything that I could verbalize, like without those frameworks to compare like my inner journey with, what's happening out there.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Nature is definitely
yeah.
heals for sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak more to how creativity is like just really played a role in your life?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think that like the more that I've gone on in time and reflected back, the more it's just kind of blown me away. Just how like profound the almost like igniting of this drive to create became like, so 4.5 years ago, I suddenly got very, very sick and I was hospitalized a few times, and I was not, no, we didn't know what was going on. I was really sick at home in bed with a lot of neurological symptoms and just like nothing functioning in my body. It was terrifying. It was extremely, extremely dark time. And I I don't know like where it came from, but it just was like, you know, go on YouTube and watch painting videos. Like, go on YouTube and watch piano and like refresh yourself on piano. And I did that for hours and hours, like laying in bed. I watched a lot. I watched like every episode of Bob Ross on Netflix. I watched so much The Watercolor, and before that I had dabbled in, like, I had always been a dabbler at some time in art and music my whole life, and sometimes more than others, but it was like, I don't know, it was like it came from outside of me. And there's in the I'm one of the modalities that I use in my work is somatic experiencing, and in that world there's this really amazing metaphor for trauma. So you know, when I got really sick, that was a very traumatic event, and the originator of somatic experiencing, Peter Levine, he like he uses this metaphor. Here's a nature metaphor, beautiful to help us understand. There's like a river that is like the river of our emotions in life, and you know, big boulders might have fallen in there, like logs, or but it has its banks, and it keeps flowing. And when a very traumatic event happens that just like is not at all processed in the moment, a like a vortex will form outside the bank. The bank breaks, and a vortex of water forms that's just swirling, and it's very powerful. And it's outside of the normal emotional flow of life. And at the same time, when that vortex forms, a counter vortex forms inside the river that is like equal and opposite. And the counter vortex is like something that you can use to help people heal. It might be, oh hey, like, you know, while we acknowledge this little piece of trauma, we also can feel into something that is a really powerful resource of grounding or beauty. And that's what the counter vortex is. And that was exactly what happened when I went through this extreme trauma, that this huge counter vortex formed, which was this creative energy that wanted to flow through me. And so like from there, it led to me like meeting a watercolor teacher, and doing a lot of painting, and, you know, in the community while I was still feeling very unwell, but I went and I did that every week. And something kind of exploded in me with my painting at one point. Like, I just started, you know, just finding a flow. I used to always paint so detailed and like just try to like recreate, you know, an image. And instead it was like, it just started flowing with color and light, and started having paintings that felt like they were emotional movements. And then at a later time, I started having like words. Well, first I started just writing songs on my ukulele. I started writing a lot of just instrumental songs that were better than anything that I had ever come up with, but they just happened so easily, it felt like. And then I started having words come, and I started writing like songs that it was like, the more that I kind of got in touch with my body and my sense of intuition, and even to this, it's actually really easy now for me. If I'm like, oh, there's a poem that I need to, like, that wants to be written right now, I'm gonna go write it. Like, it's a feeling. It's a feeling like that. And it was the most amazing feeling, you know, when it started happening like maybe a year and a half ago, where I was like, oh, there's a song that's going to be born today. You know, like, I remember this really great song I wrote, and I was like, I went to the laundromat, did laundry. I started feeling like, oh, there's like all these themes. There's all these themes floating around. Like, what's going on? I can feel this like energy. And then I was like listening to music in the car. I took a drive to one of my favorite hiking spots, Raven Rock, and I could still feel like it like rising. I was like, I'm going to write a song. And I like hiked up the hill, and like one line came to me, as I was hiking, and then I sat down and I came up with like a really cool rhythm on the uke, and I hit record and I sang the whole song, like with a lot of words, like on the first go. And then I just rearranged it later. But so I just never had experienced anything like that before, really. But I'm so grateful that something opened in me that was like, this is one of the ways that I heal,
Yeah.
And that's something I want to be able to help other people connect with too.
When you're like kind of describing the process of how the song came to you, it just like, I just envisioned this like train that was just like not gonna like stop, and sometimes that's how creativity feels. It's just like there's no option other than to go forward and to make something happen.
Yes, that's something we've talked about. It's almost like this creative idea is taking me over.
Yeah, it's just like whoa. Yeah, I mean it just feels like almost like a channeling. And I think those moments are really beautiful. But there's also like some beauty in like discipline and kind of creating when you're in the funky weird space and you're not feeling super inspired. And there's a lot of beauty that can like come from that too, of struggling through a painting,
Right.
as well. So it's like I think there's so many different ways for us to create that it can almost be overwhelming. you know
Yeah.
like we can transmute our pain into something beautiful, or we can just create from pure joy, or we can paint because we're anxious or depressed. It's like there's so many ways. um and I think that's really beautiful, and I think that's something that I also want to inspire people to know, is that there's so many different ways to
Yeah.
go about it, and to like empower people in their unique process, and um, really encourage people to embrace the journey. Um, and we've talked about this before, and I'm so sick of destination culture. And,
Yeah.
it's like you get to a goal and then you're like, okay, what next? Instead of like enjoying, like the fruit of your labor and just being with it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's making me think too of just that part of the journey that we're trying to enjoy and be present to is terrifying.
Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah. I just want anyone who watches us to know that we were both pretty scared to do this,
Yeah.
and we did it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And um, I I have this like thing in my I think, I imagine that maybe some people out there, like creatives, and I think maybe I've done this in the past, to see people who are creating and doing great things and think, well, they must have like gotten over their fear or not have any fear, or just be so sure of themselves. They really seem like they know what they're doing. And I just want to put out there that like that's probably not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a while in my 20s where I was kind of chasing fearlessness, and I'm like, be fearless, be brave, be bold. And there wasn't this like vulnerability piece that I was really sinking into. And it wasn't until I could really like integrate that vulnerability. Um, and yeah, I mean, vulnerability has been like my biggest um, vehicle for transformation. Um, and anytime I share or open myself up to people about my past, um, I'm always kind of gifted with this like beautiful moment of connection and like gratitude and grace from other people. Um, and it's really awesome to like see the impact of saying scary shit and being like, these are kind of some ugly parts of myself, and here they are. Like, and inviting people to like embrace those sides of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you're doing this?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many reasons why I'm doing this. I think in the last year, I've just been craving community and craving a creative community and kind of trying to figure out like, where is it? Like, I need to find it. And then I was like, maybe like, maybe I create it. And then like we connected, and
Yeah.
it just kind of started to like snowball into something really beautiful. But I want to create this because I want people to know how powerful they are and how powerful their inspiration is to others. And inspiration has just been like the birthplace of my transformation, in a way of like letting myself be inspired, um, and allowing myself to inspire other people. Um,
Mhm.
and I think so often creatives kind of safeguard and kind of hold their gifts back, and they
Yeah.
don't realize like how impactful and how much of a ripple effect you have when you step into, you know, your empowered self and you share, you know, a bit of your soul. And I think that's why creating is so vulnerable, because it's like, here's a piece of my heart, here's a piece of my soul, you know, and I'm expressing that to the world. And it's really vulnerable and scary, but I guess I mainly want people to get how important it is for them to express themselves.
Yeah. I always love when I like share like music or something like with you and you're like, I could feel your soul. Like,
uh,
Amanda could feel my soul. That makes me feel good.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm like 100% like on board with everything that you said as far as like why I feel like I'm doing this.
Mm.
And I feel like it's just a shame. I just want people to be able to really experience the wonder for themselves of what it is like to be able to express their gifts.
Yeah.
And I totally get that people are at so many different places on their journeys. And um, as we thought about this space, I thought about people who maybe are at a place where, maybe like where I was like 4 years ago or something, and how coming across something like this and just like coming to like a pool of other people's inspiration,
Mm.
that I could gather some up and kind of like absorb that energy of others and just see that other people are going for it and
Mm.
putting themselves out there. And for those of us who have extra inspiration to share, um, then we can lift others up. And so I see this as being a space where we cheer each other on and lift each other up, and not a space for comparison,
Mm.
not a space for perfectionism, um, and you know, there's also a part of me that's like, when I ask myself like why I'm doing this, I'm like, I don't know, because um, because this is to me a great experiment in co-creation.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that's something that these experiences have shown me, is like when I create, it's not really just me creating. Like I'm co-creating with, and everyone might have a different, terminology or whatever they believe, but I'm co-creating with the universe or with my higher power, or with other people, with the world around me. And it's not just art isn't the only thing people can create, right? Like I come across a lot of people who are like, I'm not creative. And I'm like, well, but you do this, you do that, like you're creating your life, like you're designing your life every day, and you are making choices every day to, shape your life into a work of art if you want it to be, to whatever experience, towards an experience that you want it to be.
Yeah.
And so like this is co-creation too, because like we didn't really know, like we didn't have a script for this conversation. Like this is co-creation right now, this conversation. Any other people that we decide to have these interviews or co-creative conversations with. Oh, there's the gecko. Do you hear it?
That's loud.
Yeah.
How big are they?
Yeah, and I guess when this idea came around and this phrase that had come to me, inspiration is contagious, and the idea to like interview each other or interview other people, something is calling me towards it that I'm not even sure what to expect out of it 100%, because that's what my life has been like. It's been surprising, and I've been just trusting and then not trusting a little, but still trusting and doing things that are kind of scary, and trying to just be myself and trying to figure out what that means. And so it's a mystery. Creating is always a mystery.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of
said.
exploring that mystery. Part of why I'm doing this, exploring the mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, and just leading with curiosity and willingness and trust. And I mean, yeah, I couldn't have planned my life. It's like I live in Bend, Oregon, and I was living in Portland a year ago. Like I didn't know that I was gonna end up here. I didn't know that I was gonna sell paintings this last year. Like it just kind of happened, and I just followed the nudges. And I think sometimes we kind of think that creating has to be this grandiose, like romantic, like it has to be like perfect lighting and this and that. And I've had many moments where my creating is not glamorous at all, and it's like I wrote a poem about grief the other day, and I was at the river and I was like, oh, I don't have my notebook, like what am I gonna do? And I busted out my phone and I texted myself. And I think there's a lot of beauty in not kind of creating these rigid rules for ourselves of like creating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I'm excited to keep exploring that.
Yeah. I think that quote that Kathy sent us about art being sacred and not sacred, I think really impacted me. And
yes,
there's just a lot to still uncover there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely been encouraging myself and encouraging others to just, pull out your journal or notebook or whatever and just start. You don't have to get into the perfect place first. Like, can you let the creating be what transforms you into the space that that you want to be in?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of like the intention that I want to bring into the group of like, come as you are, like who you are, and in whatever space you're in, because there's so much beauty that can happen when you are honoring exactly where you are.
Yeah. Like this conversation, I feel great right now. I felt like crap earlier.
Yeah, I was an anxious mess yesterday at work. My coworkers are like,
I felt really sick this morning, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this, and I feel perfect now. But it's, like stepping into the space of creating and stepping into the space of our power. It's amazing sometimes that it just flicks a switch,
Yeah. It can be so like just energizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just give a shout out like that. One of the next people that we're going to be doing a conversation with is Shellen Harkin, and I reached out to her recently. She's an amazing poet, a mystical poet who has released one book of poems, and she has another one coming. And I just love hearing her talk about the way that this poetry comes to her and comes through her. And when I read them, I'm like, this is medicine. Like this, reading her poetry is really strong medicine for me. It connects me with my light. It connects me with myself and everything else. So I'm super excited to hear more from her and see what else we do and who else we end up talking with.
Yeah. I was also very impacted by her poem, the one that you sent me. I was just like, oh,
yes.
Wow. It just kind of like hits you right in your heart.
Yeah.
And those are the types of people that are my people.
Yeah. And if anyone else is in our space and is just like inspired or has ideas, feel free to reach out to us and share. We are working together to plan some offerings together for creatives beyond just this space, and so we'd just love to be able to connect with people and hear more about your experiences and have you share some of your creations with us.
Yeah. Thank you for leading the meditation and just being so willing to go on this journey with me and
Yeah,
just
me too.
exactly who you are.
Thank you for being exactly who you are. Super grateful for you.
For you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone who has watched or who will watch in the future.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Well,
An inspiring day.
yes. Everyone have an inspiring day. I think the conversation feels complete.
It feels complete.
All right. Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
Bye.